Moreover, the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their own way and by their doings. Their way was before me as the uncleanness of a removed woman. Wherefore I poured my fury upon them for the blood that they had shed upon the land, and for their idols wherewith they had polluted it. And I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed through the countries. According to their way and according to their doings I judged them. And when they entered unto the heathen, whither they went, they profaned my holy name, when they said to them, These are the people of the Lord Yahweh, and are gone forth out of his land. Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 16 to 20. Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh. Double honors to our venerable apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and blessings to the Lord's elect, the house of David. All right, so Brother Aharon coming back at you with another lesson, lowering to be edifying and uplifting unto the elect. All right, this is a lesson that I had wanted to do last night, but the Spirit had it be brought out today instead. Right, and something I was meditating on, which is the climate, all right, in which we're in right now. You got these devils, all right, basically on a campaign, all right, to come against you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans. All right, I'm talking about openly. All right, and that is to fulfill biblical prophecy, because from the apostles and elders on down, we've been telling you that, all right, there's going to be a time of Jacob's trouble, as is written in the scriptures. All right, many different prophets saw the same exact time, okay, of bewailing, death, destruction, famine, pestilences, okay, wars, all right, ultimately a lot of bloodshed, okay, and that's all being done by the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahushai, all right, the man of war himself, okay, the Lord of armies, all right, and it's all because his people, all right, the Israelites, you so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, yes, we are the Most High's chosen people, okay, and we're not here to make an argument about that. We're just giving you facts, not just from the Bible, but also from history, to prove who we are, that we fit the curses, and ultimately we're going to get those blessings. Something that you devils are trying to fight, just like you did back during the time of Cain. You murder Abel because you knew that his offering was accepted by the Most High, and yours wasn't. Same things that's going on now. Our offering is being accepted by Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, and yours isn't. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to want to take us out, okay? If you take us out, then ain't no blessings for nobody then, right? Well, you got something coming, because the prophecy states, all right, as a matter of fact, let's get that real quick in the book of Job. All right, it says, Job chapter 5, verse 12, it says, He disappointeth the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. He taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the froward is carried headlong. They meet with darkness in the daytime, and grope in the noonday as in the night. But he saveth the poor from the sword, from their mouth, and from the hand of the mighty. So the poor hath hope, and iniquity stoppeth her mouth. Okay, so ultimately, the word of the Lord will always prevail. And those who speak the word of the Lord will be protected. As it says, but he saveth the poor from the sword, from their mouth, okay, and from the hand of the mighty. So when you devils come in to make a move, like you've always done, the Lord said he's going to deliver us from that shit. All right, all the way up until the missiles come. The Lord said he's going to deliver us, the elect that is. Okay, but this is a little something I wanted to go into, right, known as so-called African American history. Okay, and you type in, I think I typed in how many African Americans have died in America in history, whether it be from natural causes or whether it be from actual murder. Okay, because that's what Esau is known for. All right, he I think the scripture says that because they have not hated blood, right, the Lord is going to have blood pursue them. In other words, you came out shedding blood, so the Lord's going to have to shed your blood. That's just the law. Okay, that's just the law of the of reality, right? You take mine, I'm going to have to take yours. It has to bring balance. Okay, but let's read this real quick. All right. All right. This fits perfectly with the curses written in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. All right, we bring it out every single time, right? But let's read this. It says, African American history, right, which is really Israelite, Judean history, right? The so-called blacks of this land, the Negroes, all right, are from the tribe of Judah. Okay, predominantly you got Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, but predominantly the so-called Negroes here in America today and around the world are from the head tribe of the children of Israel, known as the children of the tribe of Judah. Okay, Yehowadah. All right. So it says African American history started with the forced transportation of so-called Africans to North America in the 16th and 17th century. The European colonization of the Americas. So you got two different people. All right. You got the Europeans and then you got the so-called Africans. All right. These two, all right, the Europeans are known as the Edomites. Okay. And the so-called Africans that they're mentioning here, and that's not referring to Hamites per se, okay, because there's a difference there, all right, is referring to the Israelites that look like Hamites and dwelt in the land of Ham. Therefore, they were called Africans, okay, because we dwelt in that land. It doesn't mean that we're actually Africans by nationality in the sense of being Hamites, okay? It just means that we dwelt there, and that's all part of masking the identity of who the true children of Israel are. Okay, so it continues. It says, the European colonization of the Americas and the resulting Atlantic slave trade, okay, encompassed a large-scale transportation of enslaved Hebrews across the Atlantic. So I'm gonna make the edits for them. All right, since they don't want to tell the truth, we're gonna tell the truth. Okay, it says, of the roughly 10 to 12 million Hebrews who were sold in the Atlantic slave trade, either to Europe or the Americas, approximately 388,000 were sent to North America. Okay, so roughly 10 to 12 million, all right, were sold, okay, to be brought up here. 10 to 12 million of our people. Okay, let's get that real quick. So we talked about the reading mentions the transatlantic slave trade, right? In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 68, it says, and the Lord Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Okay, being that we were in Egypt prior, all right, in the land of Mitzrayim, okay, and that's where you get the story of the Exodus. Okay, go back and read the book of Exodus, all right, during the time of our captivity, all right, underneath the Egyptians back then. The Lord delivered us from that and took us into the wilderness for 40 years. And then eventually we went into conquered the neighboring nations around the land of Canaan. And then we took over that land and made it ours. Okay. Now, the Lord said here through Moses, this is when we're in the wilderness. He said, yes, I'm taking you to a land filled with milk and honey. Okay. Meaning it's rich. All right. It's a blessed land. All right. All you got to do is just cultivate. It will do everything else for you. But before we got there, the Lord told Moses to give us warning that I'm going to give you a set of commandments, rules, laws, statutes. Okay. This is what you're going to use to govern yourselves in my name. All right. When you enter into that land, you're going to do as the commandments say. Now, if you fail to do those things, this is what I'll do to you. All right. Number one thing is ultimately I'm going to bring heavy destruction upon you people. And if you don't repent, I'm going to have a nation come and take over. And if you still don't repent, eventually I'm going to kick you out of this land and scatter you around the world. Okay? So part of that scattering happened through the transatlantic slave trade, which is written right here. Let's read. It says, the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Okay, Egypt represented our bondage, our captivity. The Lord said, I'm going to bring you back into captivity. That's where the word Egypt comes in. Okay, I'm going to bring you back into Egypt, but this time it's not Egypt as in Mitzrayim, the land of Egypt in North America, Northeast Africa. Okay, the land of Ham. This time it's talking about bondage. Okay, the things that you suffered during the time of physical Egypt, you're going to suffer again in this modern day Egypt, which will be known as America, Babylon the Great. Okay, that's why you go back into Egypt. They got the pyramids and all these different things. America believes in the pyramids as well. They have pyramids here in America, and then they also have the pyramid on the money, the dollar bill. Okay, there's a lot of things. That's a lot of similarities, a lot of worshiping, a lot of culture, things that was taken from the Egyptian cultures or customs, if you will, which all goes back to ancient Babylonian practices and shit. Okay, so it says here, where we at? It says, after arriving in various European colonies in North America, the enslaved Africans or Hebrews were sold to European colonists primarily to work on cash crop plantations. Let's read. So the Lord says he's going to bring us back into Egypt again with ships. All right, the transatlantic slave trade, we just read that, or the transatlantic voyage. Okay, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So let's read this. It says, after arriving in various European colonies, so after the ship voyage, okay, it says the enslaved Hebrews, right, they were what? They were sold to European colonists primarily to work on cash crop plantations. A group of enslaved Hebrews arrived in the English Virginia colony in 1619, marking the beginning of slavery in the colonial history of the United States. Okay, so the Lord he sold us to our enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, meaning slaves. When you read it in the NLT, it says, then the Lord will send you back to Egypt in ships to a destination I promised you would never see again. There you will offer to, that's not right. How are we going to offer to sell ourselves to your enemies as slaves, but no one will buy you? How the hell are you going to sell yourself? When we just read in here in the history of what actually happened according to that prophecy in Deuteronomy 28 and 68. Okay, so you can't just sell yourself. Ain't nobody goes to sell themselves into slavery in a foreign land. The fuck? All right, we were forcefully brought here against our will. You think we were just on them slave ships having a party and drinking and, oh, hey, we're going on a cruise. It wasn't no cruise. We were in chains. Okay, we had men, women stacked up on top of each other. Okay, like sardine cans with no room to breathe. You literally have 2 inches of space between, 2 feet? 2 feet of space between you laying on your back and the deck that's right above your head. And you laying flat. You got your brother laying right next to you, chained from your neck to his neck, your wrist to his wrist, your ankles to his ankles, and y'all both laying there, all in a line, in lockstep, so to speak. And then if one of them was to get sick or seasick or they died, you'd be laying right next to them while they're dead, and then it starts to rot, the corpse and all that, and then it brings a stench to the point where the ship crew will have to come down there and take out the dead bodies. Okay, and when they were doing it, there's a physician who was on the boat. He was there to help with the Edomites that were on there. And he said there was one time where he went down there with a candle, and it smelled so bad the candle light blew out. That's how bad it smelled on them ships. Right? You think Edomites could to go through some shit like that? You so-called Jewish people, would you be able to sustain some shit like that, my nigga? You people are claiming to be someone you're not, but you don't want to face the consequences of the questions that come up, that arise when we say, okay, well, if that's the case, then give us the history of you going through the slavery of serving as bondmen and bondwomen. Give us the history of that. It's never happened. It will never happen. So all this bullshit of Trump saying, oh, this has been a 3,000 year thing. 3,000 years, where'd you get the numbers from? 3,000 years from what time to what time? What world is this asshole living in? Okay? And again, this is their attempt to wipe out history. Oh, the things in slavery, yeah, we don't really have to keep talking about it. Well, you don't have to keep talking about it. Because why? Because it brings the light upon your darkness. Okay, it sheds the light upon your darkness, and it's the very most obvious question. Well, if these people are not the Hebrews, then and the prophecy says that they're going to be cursed And the first curse that begins from them being brought over here is going to be in slavery. Who else on this earth has gone through that type of shit? You ask anyone on this earth, if you think of slavery, what do you think of? They're going to say, the black Americans in America, slavery, yeah. That's it. Nobody's going to think of the Jays. They're slaves. The Jays ever served in slavery? When? You claim that you've always been the people, and you've been fighting all this. Oh, we've been trying to fight for peace for 3,000 years. Really? Okay. Let's keep reading. It says here, by 1776, roughly 20% of the British North American population was of Hebrew descent, both free and enslaved. Okay, so by 1776, when America really became America, right, which next year is going to be 250 years, they said roughly 20% of the British North American population was of Hebrew descent. 20%. This was back in 1776. Now we're in 2025. These devils keep telling us that, oh, you guys make up the American population. You got only 13% of that. Really? This should never make sense, but they keep pushing it. It's like the whole 6 million thing. You know what I'm talking about. It says, during the American Revolutionary War, in which the 13 colonies gained independence and began to form the United States, Hebrew soldiers fought on both the British and the American sides. Why? Because we were sent as slaves over to the UK and many different European countries, as well as here in the Americas. We just read that. Okay, so that's part of the Lord scattering us. All these nations had a piece of Jake. Okay? And that's to fulfill prophecy. You Jays have not been transported on ships and sent over all over the world. You niggas have the power of the earth right now. And you say that, they say, oh, that's anti-Sem. Fuck out of here. It says, after the conflict ended, right, meaning the war, the northern United States gradually abolished slavery. However, the population of the American South, which had an economy dependent on plantations operation by slave labor, increased their usage of Hebrews as slaves or Israelites as slaves during the westward expansion of the United States. During this period, numerous enslaved Israelites escaped into free states and Canada via the Underground Railroad. Disputes over slavery between the northern and southern states led to the American Civil War. And that's not true. All right, the truth about the American Civil War really wasn't about having slavery or not. That's what the history books say, but that's not really what the American Civil War was about. Okay, it says in which 178,000 Israelites served in the Union side or on the Union side during the war. President Abraham Lincoln issued the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the U.S. except as punishment as a crime. Okay, now let's get some information here about what really happened, right? As to why the Civil War actually ensued. Okay, let me see here. Crazy shit. All right, so a little bit of history. All right, or actually facts, right? Because we know history is propaganda. Okay, so let's read. This reading says, I would like to present a final example of history as propaganda. We have all been told throughout our lives how the Civil War was this moral battle in the United States, that the Northerners were against slavery and the South was for slavery, and Abraham Lincoln was this great forward-looking Renaissance man who freed the slaves and united the country and made all Americans equal. The 13th Amendment, we just read that, right? This is the truth behind what happened. This is, of course, pure propaganda and not accurate at all. But after it was repeated millions of times and published into history books for all ages, just like that Holo, you know what, and the history on the Jays, you know what, the 6 million Jews, you know what, it has become fact and a national narrative intended to give Americans the illusion they live in a society of justice, freedom, and equality. Let's look at what slavery was really all about, why the Civil War happened, and how Abraham Lincoln's real feelings about blacks, in this case Hebrews or Israelites, play into our actual national history, not the propagandized narrative that has been spoon-fed to the U.S. citizens as children and around the world. You heard before about how the Spanish and others who came to the Caribbean first enslaved and abused the natives to profit from them. Well, it turned out that when the English and others landed up north in Virginia and whatnot, the locals there were far too numerous and weren't so easy to control and enslaved for the benefit of the invaders. When those northern Indians, in this case the tribes of Gad, Reuben, right, northern Indians in the Americas couldn't be managed and enslaved by the next wave of pioneers, because they went to war first, right? Slaves from Africa, right, Hebrews or Israelites from Africa were shipped in to get the job done. You shall be brought into Egypt with ships, right? Shipped in as slaves, bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Okay? It says, as a side note, when discussing the slave trade, we're talking about Europeans as a group that drove and developed the modern trade of human beings. It was a full 50 years before Columbus that the Portuguese took 10 Hebrews back to Lisbon. 10 Hebrews or Israelites to Lisbon, which is Portugal, starting the modern regular trade of Hebrew slaves. In the Americas, by the year 1619, which we just read, 1 million Israelites had already been brought from Africa to South America and the Caribbean to work in Portuguese and Spanish colonies as slaves, as the prophecy says in Deuteronomy 28:68, slaves, okay, before they ever set foot in Jamestown. Okay? It says by 1800, 10 to 15 million Hebrews had been transported to America as slaves. It is estimated that Africa lost 50 million people to death and slavery during the beginning of modern Western civilization. Okay, so because of so-called modern Western civilization, is estimated that 50 million Israelites got put to death and served slavery. Okay, it says the race war in America between whites and blacks, right, Esau and Jacob, that continues today, right? Stephen Miller talking his shit and all this, Trump and all these things they're doing. The Jays came out talking about, the biggest threat to them is so-called young African-American males and shit like that. Like what? Anyway, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody questions anything. If we were to say these devils are the biggest threats to humanity, they say, oh, that's anti-Semitic. Oh, that's hateful. Oh. But they could open up and say all these. This is how you know that they have the power of the earth. Okay, the earth is given to the hands of the wicked. All right. So it says the race war in America between whites and blacks, which are Jakes, all right, the whites being Edomites and the blacks meaning the Israelites, or Judah in this case, that continues today was a deliberate system. Deliberate. Let's look up the word deliberate. Okay? You devils. Deliberate. Let's see. It says, done with careful consideration. Okay? Determined. Okay? Consider carefully. Consult. Literally weigh well. Okay? To balance, to make level. All right? So it says here, to weigh in the mind, to consider carefully, to discuss and examine the reasons for or against. Okay? So it was a council. It was a conspiracy. All right? So it says here, it was a deliberate system of social and physical controls and taboos that were designed to reinforce the system of slavery and economic repression against the millions of Israelites who were kidnapped and forced into subservience. Slave control was accomplished by paying poor whites, poor Edomites, to be the overseers of Israelite labor and be the buffer for Israelite hatred against wealthy Edomite elites. After the end of the slave trade, the federal government was as guilty as anyone for perpetrating Israelite repressive situation. They weakly enforced the laws that ended the slave trade, but enforced the laws when returning fugitives to slavery. That's an enemy for you, okay? The federal government collaborated with the South to keep abolitionist literature out of the states. All right, abolitionists meaning those who are against so-called slavery, right? To give you an idea of exactly how educated Edomite people in the North viewed blacks or Israelites in the 19th century, I present to you this quote from Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, just prior to his election. Quote, I will say, this is Abraham Lincoln now, the one they say you people say that he abolished slavery. Let's read. Quote, I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of white and black races. People start applauding. That I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, not to intermarry with white people, and inasmuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. You hear that? And I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. You hear that? You hear that? This is what so-called Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, the one who set the slaves free, this is what he said. All right, to an applause of so-called whites. How about you, Jakes? Okay? That's what he said. That's what he said. So we don't want to hear nothing about, oh, they did this and they helped it. This is what they did. It says, I present to you Abraham Lincoln, the white supremacist. The U.S. Civil War was not about slavery as a moral institution, as it claims, or as is claimed and advertised. Most Northerners didn't care enough about slavery to put their necks on the line for it in an actual war. Lincoln's white supremacist worldview was mainstream thought at the time for educated liberal Northerners like Lincoln. The Civil War, just like the Revolution before it, was a battle of elites jockeying for power and control. Okay? The Northern elites wanted economic expansion in a developing industrialized economy, including free labor, free land, a free market, high tariffs for manufacturers in the South, and a federal centralized bank. Okay? Now, the federal centralized bank eventually comes about during 1912, 1913, after the meeting down in Jekyll Island. Okay? We'll get into that another day. I think we've done a video on that, but we might bring it up again. Okay? If the spirit wills. So it says, elites who ran plantations in the South had a slave-based feudal system and wanted nothing of modern industrialization unless they were in charge, and saw their way of life being threatened and their position as owners of their society being usurped by rival elites. This quote is from Lincoln during his first inaugural speech, and I quote, I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists. I believe I have no lawful right to do so, and I have no inclination to do so. End quote. Continuing, it was not until the Civil War was growing uglier and grimmer, with many casualties on both sides, and as Lincoln was losing the support of abolitionists, which are anti-slave people, that he was forced to act on slavery and become the great emancipator to maintain power and control. So it was done strategically. It wasn't because he cared. Let's read. In one of Lincoln's private letters to a general, you get a true understanding of the man's feelings about Israelites and slavery. Quote, my paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and is not either to save or destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could do it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I will also do that. End quote. Abraham Lincoln made the Civil War about slavery as a political tool to win the war and establish Northern elites as the new ruling class of America. Just like they always do. And this time they're turning it around. A civil war is coming, but this time it's going to be setting up Jake, all right, as the enemy. and the cause of all these problems that's going on. Remember, they said Democrats are the reason why we have a shutdown. Democrats are saying Republicans are the reason why we have a shutdown. Ultimately, this shutdown goes on for another couple more weeks into a month. The side effects will result in people losing it and heading to the streets, whether to get food, to get some shelter, whatever the case may be. And your government is not going to be there to help you. Okay? And people are going to take matters into their own hands. And chaos will ensue. It says, the story of the Civil War is historical propaganda. It was not a battle between good and evil for slavery and freedom, for liberty and justice. It was a war of greed and control like all others. It was a war of elites as they fought for control over the Union and who got their way of life imposed on the other groups of elites and their minions. You have industrialization versus feudalism. Everyone else was just cannon fodder for this elite power struggle. And if you think things went well for slaves after Abraham Lincoln came down off his white supremacy high horse to emancipate them, he and the federal government pretty much left them to their own devices to be used and abused by their former Southern masters for the next century until the people partially freed themselves in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Here is a quote, and it's very spiritual because 1960s, right around 1969, 1970, pretty much when the truth came out. All right, that same decade is where you start having Jake fight for civil rights and freedom. Okay, but ultimately, it wasn't until the truth came out that really broke us up out of that state of freedom and in the sense of mental, as it tells you in the book of Micah. See if I can get that real quick. Read Micah chapter 2 and verse 10. It says, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you even with a sore destruction. So up and be gone. This is no longer your land or home, for you have filled it, or you have filled it with sin and ruined it completely." Well, Esau is the one who's done that. Okay? He's the one who's done that. Not only just here in America, but also in the land of Israel. The Holy Land has become unholy. It's become polluted. It's become profane. And that's why the Lord's going to have to torch it and clean it up. Okay? It says, here is a quote from a former slave named Thomas Hall about what happened to them after Lincoln took the credit for their freedom. Quote, "Lincoln got the praise for freeing us, but did he do it? He gave us freedom without giving us any chance to live to ourselves, and we still had to depend on Southern white man for work, food, and clothing, and he held us out of necessity and want in a state of servitude, but little better than slavery." Ooh. Let's get that real quick. Ooh, that sounds like a curse to me. Let's get that real quick. Here's the book of Deuteronomy. Oh, there you go. There's a book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. It says, "Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies," right? Slavery, "which the Lord Yahweh shall send against thee," right? Because literally they came over there to the western parts of Africa, rounded us up and brought us over here. So the Lord sent them down there, right? It says, "In hunger." So what did the guy say? It says, Lincoln got the praise for freeing us, but did he do it? He gave us freedom without giving us any chance to live to ourselves, and we still had to depend on the Southern white man for work, right? For food and clothing, right? And he held us out of necessity and want in a state of servitude, but little better than slavery. So because I want all these things and I need all these things, I had to serve this motherfucker, right? It says what? "And I shall send against thee in hunger," they wanted food, "and in thirst," right? "And in nakedness," clothing, "and in want of all things," necessities, "and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he had destroyed thee." Okay? Serving, what, in a state of servitude, but little better than slavery. Okay? Were the slaves really freed, or were they just put into another kind of bondage and control? One a little opaque then and not as direct as outright slavery. Their physical slavery quickly turned into wage slavery through various social and economic controls for the next century. I give you these two important historical examples to show just how big and brazen propaganda is. It is written into the very fabric of our known world and gets programmed into us as children as a fact that we never once considered to challenge or our entire lives until we got this truth. Okay? The Civil War was about slavery, and America was founded by Columbus is an assumed fact that the sky, it says, is an assumed fact that the sky is blue and the sun will rise every day. Right? It's just assumed. But is it really true? As we just read, not so much. Okay? But that's some information I just want to bring out to prove the point. Okay, that some of the curses that we went through, especially slavery, it's just evident. It's built into the fabric of American history. Whether it's propaganda or not, the fact that the Hebrews, the Israelites, were served captivity and slavery under you people, you Edomites, all right, that's an indictment against you. Okay, you can't run from that. It's history. I don't care if Trump want to wipe out the Smithsonian, blow it up, bomb it up, whatever the case may be. Nigga, we still here. Okay, we still here. We're not in our land. We still here. So when the Lord comes back, all right, to get his people, he's going to find us in slavery. And what's he going to do to those who oppressed us? We've been telling you that. We've been telling you what's going to happen to you. Okay? So it says, after the war, going back to the reading, after the war ended with a Confederate defeat, the Reconstruction era began, in which African Americans, in this case Israelites living in the South, were granted limited rights compared to their white counterparts. White opposition to these advancements led to most Israelites living in the South to be disenfranchised, and a system of racial segregation known as the Jim Crow laws was passed in the southern states. They want to do that again, but this time digital. Okay? Beginning in the early 20th century, in response to poor economic conditions, segregation, and lynchings, over 6 million Hebrews, right? That word 6 million, that 6 million comes back. Ain't that interesting? They hijacking even the number. That's some crazy shit. Okay? Beginning in the early 20th century, in response to poor economic conditions, segregation, and lynchings, which the Jays never went through, over 6 million Israelites, primarily rural, were forced to migrate out of the South to other regions of the United States in search of opportunity. The nadir of American race relations led to civil rights efforts to overturn discrimination and racism against Israelites. In 1954, these efforts coalesced into a broad, unified movement led by civil rights activists such as Rosa Parks and Martin Lucifer King, or Michael Lucifer King. This succeeded in persuading the federal government to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed racial discrimination. Well, that means they've been breaking the law ever since then, because last time I checked, there are certain opportunities you don't get because of your skin color, because of your category of being categorized as being a so-called African American, okay, or Latino or Native American. Look what's going on, man. All right, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed racial discrimination, but yet we live in a system of white supremacy. Okay, so ain't gonna be no racial discrimination that's gonna be outlawed. You crazy? It says, let me see something here. All right, it says white supremacy, which is Edomite supremacy, has impacted Israelite history, resulting in a legacy characterized by systemic oppression, violence, and ongoing disadvantage that the Israelites, the Hebrew Israelite community, continues to this day. Okay? Israelites were brought to the United States because of the native, which will be the Northern Kingdom, genocide in the United States. Damn. During the 17th century, European colonists in North America increasingly relied on enslaved Israelites for labor, as they were a more affordable and abundant workforce compared to indigenous Native Americans, otherwise known as the Northern Kingdom, and indentured servants who were primarily impoverished and poor white Europeans. Okay? And then, of course, you go into the enslavement. They got all these different... you devils, man. You devils, man. Right? The Northern Kingdom were first enslaved before the Southern Kingdom. It's literally right here. Native Americans were first enslaved before African Americans. Okay? You see that? So the Northern Kingdom got taken by the Assyrians. And then later on, the southern kingdom by the Babylonians. Same exact thing happening centuries down the line, where the natives, North American Indians, right, the northern kingdom getting taken over, and then the southern kingdom getting taken over again later on. Okay, you had the Spanish, and then you had the British, the Portuguese, and so on and so forth. The French, right, the Dutch. Okay, which are all Edomites. The Americans, which were really back then Europeans and shit. Okay, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot, right? It's a whole lot. They deemed us inferior and suitable for slavery and all this shit. The Lord is the one who put the spirit on them to do that. Okay? Get so much information here. All right? They kidnapped us from various regions: Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Congo, right? You name it. They took us all from there, man. All right? They took us all from there because prior to that time, right, you got the Igbo, right, the Khan, Yoruba, all right, just to name a few. Mandinka, okay, the Mandinka warriors, right? Yeah, Benin, Nigeria, right, Cameroon, Gabon, Angola, Congo, Tanzania, Mozambique, Madagascar, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, the Guinea, right? Niger, Senegal, right? Gambia, Senegambia. Okay. Let me see if I can find a little bit more. Yeah, that's pretty much it, man. All right. Look at this. Man, this is a whole different topic right here I could get into. Might have to do a part 2 to this shit. To this right here. Okay, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. Look at this. Oof. Man, this is crazy. But hey, it's good stuff right here. It's good stuff I could bring out. Okay, but again, this is all going to show you, all right, that we fit the curses, not these devils. I don't care what they say, right? They don't have a say in what's going on because they're not us, period. All right, you could claim all you want. You can claim, but how far are you going to go with the claim? How far are you going to go with the claim? Okay, let's get this real quick. Let me see. I believe it's in the book of Jeremiah. Let's see if I can find it here. Boom. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 33 says, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah," right? The children of Israel, the northern kingdom, which represents the so-called Native Americans, and the children of Judah, the southern kingdom, which represents you so-called African Americans, were oppressed together. Okay? And all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go till today. To this day. Right? To this day, man. Okay? And this is all biblical. Ain't no way around it. This is all biblical, man. Okay? And when the Lord comes back, this is what he's going to do to you devils. Okay? This is what he's going to do to you devils. All right? This is the book of Ezekiel chapter 35. Start off at verse 1. It says, "Moreover, the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it, and say unto it, Thus saith the Lord power, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out mine hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. I will lay thy cities waste. Thou shalt," it says, "and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord Yahweh. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel," right? You shed the blood of the children of Israel through what? It says what? Native Americans, which are part of the children of Israel, were first enslaved before African Americans. However, their populations declined sharply due to diseases introduced by European colonizers, you damn devils. Okay, the smallpox and all that. Okay, and then over here with the Southern Kingdom, it was just straight savagery, bro. I'm talking about you got the KKK, you got all these different things that happen in history. You want to hide all that? You want to hide all that? It says, "Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity," right, our slavery, "in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood." and blood shall pursue thee. Sith thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Okay? You go after blood, you're going to get a taste of your own medicine, as Trump said. Thus will I make Mount Seir most desolate, and cut off from it him that passeth out, and him that returneth, everyone. All right? Meaning no one's going to escape. I will fill his mountains with his slain men. In thy hills and in thy valleys and in all thy rivers shall they fall that are slain with the sword. I will make thee perpetual desolations, and thy cities shall not return, and ye shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh. Because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries shall be mine, and we will possess it, whereas the Lord Yahweh was there. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will even do according to thine anger, and according to thine envy, which thou hast used out of thy hatred against them, and I will make myself known among them when I have judged thee. Okay? And who's it them? Israel, the children of Israel. Okay? And thou shalt know that I am the Lord, and that I have heard all thy blasphemies, which thou hast spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying they are laid desolate, they are given us to consume. Thus with my mouth, thus with your mouth, ye have boasted against me, and have multiplied your words against me. I have heard them. Okay? You devils talking about you're gonna be like the Most High, you're gonna be sitting in the mount of the congregation, all these different things. Was Isaiah 14? Okay? Thus saith the Lord power, when the whole earth rejoiceth, I will make thee desolate. As thou didst rejoice at the inheritance of the house of Israel, because it was desolate, so will I do unto thee. Thou shalt be desolate, O Mount Seir, and all Idumea, even all of it. And they shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai. Okay? In the NLT, you rejoiced at the desolation of Israel's territory, the children of Israel. Now I will rejoice at yours. You will be wiped out, you people of Mount Seir, and all you who live in Edom, which Edom today, even the Jays say, is America. Okay, the land of Edom is America. Then you will know that I am the Lord Yahweh. Okay, so this was coming for you devils, man. All right, as Ezekiel 35 is for you devils, you Edomites, you Idumeans. Okay, you're not going to escape. Just like how we ain't get to escape, you're not going to escape. And we're way more powerful than you devils. Okay, even in our lowest estate, we're better than you. In every facet of the word, better. We are better than you. Why? Because we're the sons of God. That's it. Okay? And as ridiculous as our people can be sometimes, we're still a special people. And that's the only thing you could do is make money off of us. You put our best of the best in your Olympic competitions to make America's name great. Why don't you send your Edomites up there? You know you're going to lose every single race, every single competition. Okay? World's strongest man. I think it was Mark Felix. There was a time where he was like the world's strongest man. That's a Jake. Okay? This guy, what's his name? Ronnie Coleman, that's a Jake. Michael Jordan, that's a Jake. Mike Tyson, that's a Jake. Okay? Michael Jackson, that's a Jake. Okay? Aretha Franklin, Jake. All the great people that made America great, that made America stand for something great, that attracted these nations to want to be like America, all came from Jake. And this is when we're at our lowest point, from slavery till now. Now imagine when we become to the highest point, when the Lord literally picks us up, all right, cleans us up from our filthy rags and turns us into kings and puts that garment of pure robes upon us, cleanses us, all right, our minds, our spirits, get us new bodies and put us in our right mind. Okay, the kings and priests, okay, the line of David and the Levites. Okay, as a matter of fact, I think there's a precept on that. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. All right, line of David and the Levites that are joined onto me. Oh shit. No, Levi. Let me see. Not seeing it here. Type in David and Levi. Levites. Maybe not. Maybe not. Let me see. There you go. There you go. Right. Jeremiah 33 and verse 21, it says, Then may also my covenant be broken with David my servant, that he should not have a son to reign upon his throne, and with the Levites, the priests, my ministers. As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand is verse 22, Jeremiah 33 verse 22, there's a point. As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David my servant, and the Levites that minister unto me. Right? The seed of David and the Levites, that represents the kings and the priests. Okay, and that goes back to, let me get that right quick. In Revelation, kingdom of kings and priests. Let's get that. And Yahushua is the ultimate king priest. Okay. I can't find it. Damn it. Let me see. Sheesh. All right. Let me see if I can find it here. There you go. There's a book of Revelation, chapter 5 and verse 10. It says, actually, there's a couple more in there, but let's read this. It says, and has made us. Yeah, start with verse 9. Let's go to verse 9 real quick. All right. Is the book of Revelation chapter 5 and verse 9. It says, and they sung a new song, which the new song is what we're singing now, is its truth, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to glory by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation. And that's what we preach. Okay, the words of the song is what we're preaching, right? You are worthy to take the scroll, Yahushua. You're the only one who could do this, and break the seals to open it, meaning give us the understanding. For you were slaughtered. It's through your sacrifice that we get this, and your blood has ransomed people for the Most High, meaning brought us back, right? Remember, the curse was in Deuteronomy 28, no man shall buy you. Yahushua is the only one who could buy us by his blood, okay? When he did it 2,000 years ago, it was to fulfill the time that we're about to enter into now. Those who get delivered from the destruction that's coming. It says, from every tribe and language and people and nation, meaning those who are scattered, the Israelites who were scattered into all these other nations, being brought back starting with the elect. Okay, Amos, the 9th chapter. It says, and has made us unto our power. It's like it has made us unto our God, kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. Okay, so that's what's coming, man. That's what's coming for the two nations, the two house, all right, the house of Israel and the house of Judah being brought together. Let's get that real quick and then we're going to close it out. All right, so you devils are in deep, deep trouble. You can't get out of it. It's like quicksand. You're not getting out of it. The more you try to get out, the deeper you sink into it. Okay, it's called prophecy. All right, it's the book of Amos chapter 9 verse 11 says, in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David, all right, the seed of David, that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof, and I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. Okay, so it's going to be brought back to its former glory. And guess what? Edomites that was ruling then. All right, it was Israelites, the 12 tribes coming together. All right, as one house of Israel, one house of Jacob. Okay, it says that they may possess the remnant of Edom and of all the heathen which are called by my name, saith the Lord power, that doeth this. Okay, so understand, we're going to have the power over you devils. Just like you had power over us and you still do, the Lord's going to break us up out of this shit. And then he's going to put us over you. And that's going to be forever. Your first 1,000 years, it's going to feel like a never-ending cycle. It's going to be a endless, endless duration. All right, it just keeps on going. It keeps on going. It keeps on going. All right, we went through it for what, 350 years? All right, 400 years, whatever the case may be. And now we're like, damn, That was tough shit, right? That was tough shit, but the Lord held us through. How much more for you devils, the ones that he hates? Esau, you in trouble. Anyway, I'm going to leave it off there. Lord willing, you were edified and informed. In closing, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh, the Wadi Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, and on to next time. Shalom.